Hey everyone, welcome back to the Prime Pediatric Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Skip Weiss, and I'm telling you today, I've got an amazing guest, a very, very good, dear friend of mine. I have Tim Nichols here today, amazing guy out of Texas. I want you guys to get to know him. He's got some very, very valuable things that he's going to bring to our conversation today about how we build our business inside and outside of our four walls, but more importantly, how do we network and how do we get everything going? Tim, it is so nice to have you here. How are you doing, brother?
Doing fantastic. How are you doing, Dr. Skip?
I'm doing awesome. I can't wait to have an amazing conversation with you. Tim, let's jump right into it. Can you give us a little bit of your background, introduce yourself to this awesome Prime Pediatric audience and just what you went through and how you built yourself to where you are today?
I certainly can. I am Tim Nichols, and I am located in the DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth market in Texas. And I have a program called 3 Million%. And I train business professionals in the strategies that I used to grow my own independent financial practice by 3 million% within 12 months in a town where I didn't know anyone.
Which is amazing, which is absolutely amazing. And we've had some pretty awesome conversations. You and I, we've sat down, we've actually spent an entire weekends together talking about who you are, your faith and everything. And I'll tell you guys, Tim out there is one of the neatest, most amazing individuals you all will ever meet. And Tim, how about you give us a little background as to your story? Like what led you up to building 3 million%? I know what your story is, but none of my viewers do. Enlighten them as to where you came from and what you've been through.
Financial advisor for 17 years. And what I did was I had started off in the industry with a certain brokerage firm that had me knocking on 25 doors a day. You might know if you know their investment or their business cycle or business process, but I went through the 2008 and 9 market crash, and that really affected everything that I do. And when that happened, I moved to Dallas and went to work for a big name bank. And what they wanted was they wanted me inside the bank all the time, and that was not the kind of person I was. So sorry about that.
No worries.
And so that isn't how I was best at growing my financial practice. So what I did was I went independent. When I went independent, I wanted to move to this community that was high net worth, high income, high influence, but with that came heavy competition. And it was a very close-knit market where, man, they didn't take in outsiders that well. And so I knew that was going to be a big challenge for me. So what I did, Dr. Skip, I took everything that I had learned in the past that had worked well for me, and I left behind what the big banks and brokerage firms were trying to tell me to do. And I just started applying it on my own. And what I did worked so well that it allowed me to grow by 3 million% within my first 12 months. But in year 2, the city came and asked me to put my name in the hat to run their retirement plan. I had a bank come to me and say, hey, would you work with our customers as well as take over our 401k? So I had some major things happen that were results of this process. So 3 years in, I had so many businesses that wanted to know how I did what I did. I was mentoring probably 20 businesses at a time and still trying to run my financial practice. And that got pretty difficult to do. And so I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I was on the board of directors at the Chamber of Commerce at the time, and which plays into my strategy of how I did all of that. I'll explain that in a minute. But I noticed there was an emotional leak where they were losing about 5 to 10 businesses per month. And I thought, man, I know how to fix this. I can just tell them what I do, and that will solve my mentorship problem, but also it will help them grow and help me get more new faces to try to build relationships with. And so I wrote a book called 3 Million%, 5 Proven Keys to My Success with the Chamber of Commerce. And in that was the step-by-step guide of what I did, how I did it, and why I did it. And so, yeah, it not only gave them the steps, but also the purpose in the steps. Well, I did that, but like what you might hear from Udemy, only 5% of the people who take those online courses actually complete the courses.
Right.
It was almost like that with my book, and I could see that playing out in our local Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce actually bought a lot of my books and just distributed them to the members of the chamber. And so in doing that, they would go to the networking events with me and things like that. But what we learned, I could actually see who's working. I can see who's doing the process in a networking event. It's that obvious when you know what to do. And I could tell only about 5% of the people were actually doing it. So in 2018, I wrote a curriculum and developed a peer advisory program where my mentees became mentors, and they started training other businesses in the curriculum as to what to do. Well, when we did that, it changed the culture of the whole Chamber of Commerce, so that at the chamber networking events, you had about, I'm going to say there was about 75% of the actual members who had been through my program were doing it so differently. And all of this is based on a simple Ziglar concept from Zig Ziglar. It was a quote: "You can have everything you want in life if you will help enough other people get what they want."
Yeah.
What I learned
absolutely.
out of that was, the faster that I can help someone get what they want, the faster I get what I want. And
Yep.
the one thing that we all had in common, Dr. Skip, is that we wanted to grow our business.
So what
That's
we're
why we were there.
when we look at that, and I want to go back to something you talked about, was that when you left your previous financial employment and then working with the bank, you went into a community of very affluent people. You went into a community of high net worth. You went into a community where the standard, the social norms were a little bit higher. Why did you do that?
Well, I will say that I wanted to be I wanted to be more successful and position myself in a place where I would have proximity to those that were affluent,
Yep. Yep.
because I needed a higher end client. So it would be the difference of, let's say, I know that you speak into chiropractic offices. It would be the difference of having your chiropractic office near an affluent community versus having it near a community that just didn't have a lot of cash flow to it.
Yeah, lesser affluent, lower blue collar, things like that. And
Right.
we've talked about that previous on guys on previous episodes, and you all know this, but what Tim's talking about is the change in your demographics and how that helps you in your clinic charge what's appropriate for the fees. Because in chiropractic, you all listening, you know that we live from this massive heart center of give, love, serve, and to help people even at the most dire of needs get care, because we believe that everybody should be under chiropractic care. But the other side of it is that you should be able to provide for your family. But the other thing is that when you're sowing the ground, when you're sowing that seeds into your community, you're there to create really good wealth for yourself, so you can start giving it back out to your community. That's what you're intended to do, y'all. And this is exactly what Tim does. And I love it. So Tim, what was the main 5 steps, if you could kind of look at that and how you went into the chamber and started changing it? Where was your starting point with that? What were your action steps?
I'll tell you, I started in this community not knowing a single person. Okay. So I'm going to give you from the very start what you can do. I actually went and sat down with our chamber executive director and said, "Hey, this is who I am and this is what I'm about to do. I'm about to grow your chamber using my process, but what it's going to do is grow my influence. And so I want to serve." I took a servant leader approach with them and said, "Look, I'm here to serve. I'm going to grow because I'm going to serve." Now,
Mm-hmm.
what I did, I distilled all my processes down to 5 key strategies. Deepen relationships quickly. That could be translated to create strategic relationships. Elevate your profile within your market. Leverage networks. Build credibility and establish community. Now, I have tactics that speed up those processes, every one of them. And so some of it is how you talk to people, the rhythm and flow of the conversations you're having. Some of it is how you come across in the community, how you're engaging in the community. Others is who are you engaging with, and that leveraging networks. So we can go into detail on that if you like, Dr. Skip, but I just want to give you an idea.
Let's do it. So let's look at the first one. So your first aspect, what was the first one right off the bat?
Create strategic relationships, or
Okay.
deepen relationships quickly.
So
So
when
if you
you
read
look
my
at
book,
that,
Yeah,
When
if you read my book, it's Deep in Relationships Quickly. One thing I learned is in networking events, not a single person was there to buy anything. Has that been in your experience, Dr. Skip?
It's always like that. Everybody's there to sell stuff.
That's right. It doesn't matter what organization you're in, Chamber of Commerce, BNI, any other networking organization, or any other association. No one is there to buy anything. So I applied that Ziegler concept of helping others get what they want faster so that I can get what I want. So as I began to have these conversations, I didn't want to have a financial conversation with them, because what that would do is that would just immediately build a wall between us,
Yeah.
and they would shut me out. They would be looking for another conversation to go to. So I began to deepen that relationship by finding someone or something in common as quickly as I could. So where you are, it might be Green Bay Packers, right?
Mhm.
Everybody there, from what you've said, everybody there loves the Packers, right?
Pretty much.
But
Pretty much.
but you can get it too much into the superficial. So what I would do is I would try to go one deeper and just keep trying to deepen that relationship by the questions I asked. So there's a rhythm and flow and the depth at which you go that will open up those conversations. It's called a vulnerability loop. And you can share a pre-story with them about what you're going to ask them next, and you can share that pre-story to a depth that you want them to go.
Okay.
So you're priming them mentally to give you a response that mirrors your response, that mirrors your pre-story. Then
Okay.
you ask them the question, and typically they will give you a response to the depth at which you went. So if you want them to be vulnerable, you become somewhat vulnerable to them.
I see. So when you're becoming somewhat vulnerable, then you're deepening that relationship through conversation. Do you feel that there's any other areas that after, so let's say that conversation ends, you leave the meeting, you leave the chamber event. How do you furthermore deepen that conversation, deepen that relationship with that said person? I kind of have an answer in my head, but I'd like to hear what you have to hear on that.
So it's kind of like playing billiards or playing chess. You set up your next move in every conversation. Okay.
Mhm.
So what I do is I go into these events with an idea in mind of how many one-on-one appointments I want to schedule for the next week. And I always have I'm not sure how it would be in clinical practice, but as a financial advisor, I could leave a day open on my calendar for the next week that would be in preparation for me going to this event,
Mhm.
right? And I could say, all right, I've got 8 o'clock on Tuesday available. I've got 8:30. I've got 9. So I could go through that day and schedule my appointments. Just created some proficiency there. But I would try to go deep with 20% of the room as I went into these events. But I would try to schedule at least 4 one-on-one appointments to continue the conversation. So you don't want to get tied down into a deep conversation in that networking event. You try to go deep enough to know if they are someone that you want to have a next conversation with, or if you need to find them someone else who can help them grow. That's where you turn around and make an introduction. So you can avoid those traps in those networking events. The people where you get into a counseling conversation, something like that. So you can avoid those traps if you have those goals in mind when you go in. Hey, I need 4 appointments out of this. And then you also have who targets that you want to see. If you had people in mind that you need to meet these people while you're at that event because they're going to be at that event, then you want to go straight for them and try to go ahead and schedule those one-on-ones with them as soon as possible. But how I do that is, to answer your question, is setting up that next conversation while we're in there. Now, that also can look like, hey, let's trade information. I mean, you can trade cards there, but you can send them a scheduling link or request their scheduling link and try to set something up for the next week or even 2 weeks out. But you have an idea of what you're going to be discussing in the next conversation. If we follow that Ziegler concept, though, You're listening for opportunities as to how better to connect them, because you don't want to view them as a prospect. You want to view them as a potential referral source. And you can turn them into a referral generator just by helping them grow. So the faster you help them grow, the faster they're going to help you grow. So grow them fast.
That's it. This is really important for you all listening out there that are going out and trying to meet new patients, the new public. You're going to networking events and learn. It's when you're at networking events, when you're learning other businesses, you're there to learn and deepen relationships and understand what's going on with the people in front of you. Not sell them as to, hey, give me Chuck, send me your next 2 clients. Tammy, send me your next 3 possible patients. It's establishing and creating really deep relationships with them, because that's how we create bonds. That's how we create trust. That's the key to all of this, is creating trust, whether it's sitting across knee to knee with the patient and or talking to them on the phone. So what Tim's talking about in our world here in chiropractic would be getting people to understand what you do as a chiro, but understand what they do as a profession, so you can start creating that relationship so they know where you fit into their wheelhouse. Nobody ever goes to a networking event singing, okay, I got to figure out 5 different people to send into to so-and-so. That's what makes BNI kind of broken. That's what makes networking events broken, is that they're always looking to pass referrals instead of actually getting to know all the businesses in the group. So when you go in, Tim, what would be great advice for a young chiropractor that's going into some of these networking events, or let's just say the chamber? How can they step into the chamber and really separate themselves apart, make themselves stand out, and just become known as the person that's actually the connector instead of the person that just takes and takes and takes?
So actually, this goes into the process side of what I talk about on the creating strategic relationships. So in that process side, let's say you're brand new to the chamber. Okay. There, if you imagine this room and you've got, let's imagine a bar, right? That I think of a hotel bar we have here that has a round bar in the middle, and the existing centers of influence usually hang around that bar, and they expect everyone to come to them to make a drink order or whatever, right? That's kind of their game plan. Well, then you've got all of these other, what I'd call just general members. The further they are to the outside, the more they're introverted or the newer they are to the group.
Okay.
Okay. So if I'm a chiropractor and I'm going into an organization like that, I would say start from the outside in. So you go to that event, but don't be one of the ones that sits there and you wait on someone to talk to you, because other people aren't trained like this.
Mhm.
They are not trained in 3 million% strategy. So they don't, and a lot of people by default have a certain amount of introversion to them.
Yep.
And there's about 50%, I believe it is. And so you can't count on them to come talk to you, because they might feel as awkward as you might feel,
Yep.
even if they've been coming there. So what I did was I would go into the outside and I would start meeting the introverts and those that were new to the community, new to their business, just started a new business, something like that. Get to know them, but then start introducing them to one another.
Yep. Start
Okay.
connecting them, right?
That's right. You start connecting those introverts and those that are new to one another, and you start building community with them, because then they're looking to you for who else they need to meet. But if
Exactly.
you're going through the deepening relationship process, you get to know, and I would spend less than 10 minutes probably per person, but you're trying to ask questions in this certain rhythm and flow, which I teach, where they're giving you this information and you're using it to introduce them to others in that group. And then you sit and listen to the next person. They give you that information and you take those two and you introduce them to someone else. So the repetition of you introducing these two, let's say each person, as you grow, as you build in that community, at that networking event, you start by repetition in your introductions, you remember their name better, you remember their details better, all of that kind of thing. And they hear you repeat that and they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel accepted, and they know that you are trying to help them because you bring them, you carry them forward into your next conversation. There are times when they're going, you hear some synergy that they need to flesh out on their own. So that's when I say, hey, excuse me, I'm going to go meet someone else, or I've got to
Mhm.
see someone else here. So then that's when I might break away and go start doing that somewhere else. And then as the time goes on, you can start introducing them to one another. In the large events now, like let's say a banquet, that's where I target the existing centers of influence. So if you're new to a chamber, and I mean, like right now, well, we just got out of chamber banquet season, but how I approach those is I'm not worried about meeting the general membership. That's where I go after the existing centers of influence. So I learned a little trick here, Dr. Skip.
Let them have it. Tell them about it. There, I'm sure everybody's sitting on the edge of their seats because you're dropping some major stuff, Tim. And before we get into this secret, how do these docs get a hold of you? How can they get some information on you, Tim, right away?
So you can email me at Tim at the number three, and then spell out millionpercent.com. And I would be glad to have a conversation with you. And you can also go to access.3millionpercent.com. That's number three, spell out millionpercent.com.
And I'll be sure to put a link in from Amazon for your book at the bottom of this too in the show notes. And so Tim, now jumping back into the secret, what's that little bit of a secret sauce that you've got there?
So I experimented with something here recently at the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
I was helping one of my coaching clients there, and I had no idea who anyone in business was in Austin, Texas, except my client. And I thought, well, this is what I do. This is how I can do this. So I learned who the leadership was of the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce, who was on their board, who was on their staff. And I began to go into LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and I followed those people. So you didn't have to connect to them. You can follow them, and you could see when they post. And it shows you what post it is and all that. It says, allows view post. So what I did, I went in and started engaging in the comments of their posts, and they're wondering, who is this guy? And so I started circumventing what I was going to do, or I would say priming them for what I was going to, how I was going to introduce myself when I saw them at their banquet in 2 weeks. So I had engaged with them, and in many cases, I connected with them on LinkedIn after I had engaged with them for a little bit. So when I went into that banquet, I could go straight up to them. You get there early enough before all the structured agenda starts. But I went straight to them and said, "Hey, I'm Tim Nichols. I've been looking forward to meeting you." And they were like, "Who? You look so familiar. Who are you?" I'm like, "I'm Tim Nichols from LinkedIn with 3 million%." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, you've been commenting." And so they had this immediate familiarity with me. And what that allowed to just cut to the chase on so much of what we were doing, it allowed me to jump ahead in my creative strategic relationship process to get to a place where they felt like we knew each other. And so then I could actually start introducing them to my client and other people that we had brought into their chamber banquet, and it began to elevate my profile with them. So that's actually key too, is elevate your profile within the community.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing that you use LinkedIn and you strategically can go into LinkedIn, figure out who these people are. Guys, when you're listening to this, what I'm getting at here and why I had Tim on is so you guys can understand listening what you can do when you go out and network, what it is when you're trying to understand the other healthcare providers and the other doctors in your area and the other doulas and midwives. And it's creating these relationships, communicating at a level that they understand, but then deepening the relationship. So then these people know who you are and they're not cold right away when you come up and talk to them. You've already started to establish those relationships. So then you can figure out how you can help them. And if you can figure out how to help the business professional sitting across from you and or the patient and or the child, you've already made a massive change once these become warm, amazing people and they've actually learned what's going on. So in Tim's situation here, he's figured out on LinkedIn where these people are at, started to direct message into their comments, started commenting on the messages they've been putting on LinkedIn. So they start creating relationships. So then when you start to actually meet these people in person, they actually already know who you are. And if you look at Tim stands out. Tim's got Tim's personal brand is amazing. I love it. You guys know my personal brand is bow ties. I wear really nice shirts all the time. Like, this is the things that I use to set myself out. Tim's got one of the coolest styles I've seen in a very, very long time. And you've got the white sport coat on. You've got the silk scarf. Your hats are amazing. You got the handlebar mustache that comes up, Tim. Everything about you screams Tim. And there is absolutely no mistake made when you walk into a room of who you are. And if you've connected with these people, they immediately have that rapport with you. So Tim, going out on this note, what would be your best step of advice for a young doc out there trying to get known in the public, become that preemptive status as being one of the most trusted advisors in their community? What would be one of the things that you've went through in your life that really helped make that stand out?
I would say, I guess a quote that immediately came to mind when you said that was a quote from Bob Bodine in his book, The Power of Who.
The Power of Who.
In that book, and I'm not going to quote it directly, but I'll paraphrase, you already know everyone you need to know. Okay.
Yeah.
So don't use that as an excuse of I don't know enough people or anything like that. Start where you are. Meet those around you, and so have a 6 foot radius. If someone comes within 6 feet of you, introduce yourself. You could do it that way. But you already know everyone you need to know. A lot of that comes into getting to know them well enough so that they can be able to refer to you. Now, I think it's a lot easier, especially for the chiropractors, because when people have a need for a chiropractor, they know it.
Yep.
Right? It's a structural problem and they know it. Right? So, and they, like in the Black Diamond group, Black Diamond community there, they talk about gang of five, right?
Yeah.
Well, that would be everybody that would be serving a lot of the same clients. But an approach I had was I wanted to access other industries who had no idea that they needed a financial advisor.
Yep.
Okay, so here's how that would play out in the chiropractic community. What if you accessed roofers or construction people? I bet they have back problems. I bet they have structural issues. Then you get into those that are athletic, like through the country club, that play golf and tennis. Then you get into others who sit all day, right? And so you might access those type people. And so even if you were learning and growing with a bookkeeper, well, I know of a specific bookkeeper that just deals with general contractors. And so she would be a fantastic referral source. So that's what I mean by deepening these relationships, so that they know enough about what you do and what you need, but you're trying to help connect them to your community as well and get them, I'm going to say, in touch with referral sources for them or potential clients for them.
Well, I'll tell you what, Tim, this has been absolutely awesome for my wonderful viewership and listenership out there. You don't want to miss what Tim has to offer. You don't want to miss what Tim does. Tim, how can they find you on Facebook, Instagram, on the social media accounts, and just go over your email one more time, and how can they get in touch with you again?
So email is tim@3 and then millionpercent.com. And
Nice.
so you can find me under Tim Nichols Leadership on LinkedIn as well. I don't do that much on Facebook, and I hear that there are a lot of Tim Nichols out there. But what you can do on either LinkedIn or on Facebook is look for 3 million%, and I have pages set up for those.
That is absolutely awesome. All right, y'all, you know the words behind this. Now go out there, take what Tim's talked to you about, all this gold, all these nuggets just thrown at you quickly here, and go out there and get it done. Take care, everybody. Bye.